They found a hot pizza, still sitting in the kitchen, but the entire family had vanished like they'd never existed. That's the first thing Kia said when she recalled stepping into the Holloway home on the evening of June 14th, 2011. Just hours earlier, she'd seen little Kira playing with crayons on the porch, Tasha watering the plants, and Renee waving from the kitchen with a smile. But as the sunlight started to slant and dinner should have been on the table, the front door to the Holloway house stood wide open. The ceiling fan was still spinning. Renee's phone lay by the sink, and there was only silence on the dinner table. A takeout menu fluttered in the breeze, its last page flipped over. Scrawled in faint pencil were the words, "Don't open the back door. Don't say a word," before it all happened. The Holloways were one of the most peaceful families in South Baton Rouge. Their home at 428 Maple Avenue was always filled with laughter, the smell of home-cooked meals drifting into neighboring yards, and the soft hum of Renee's old radio playing each afternoon. Malik, the father. 41 drove long-haul trucks, but he was always home on weekends. He'd take little Kira for walks in the park or help Jalen build robots from old Lego sets. Renee, the mother, worked at the local library, tall with soft curls and a wide-brimmed sun hat she wore while watering her garden. She spoke gently, but laughed loud, the kind of woman every kid on the block called Miss Wren, with the sweet smile, Tasha. The eldest at 17 wore black-rimmed glasses and always carried a sketchbook filled with her own comic universe flying cities, powered-up heroes, and a purple-haired girl named Zuri who fought for justice, Jalen. 12 was the opposite, full of energy, always twisting a Rubik's Cube like second nature. He once said he wanted to be an inventor. And Kira, the youngest at 6, was the sunshine of the family. Her giggle puffed out her cheeks, dimples deep as canyons, and her joyful shout of Daddy's home could be heard all the way across the street at Miss Kia's. The Holloways weren't wealthy, but they were solid. On weekends, they baked cookies for neighbors. At Christmas, their house was the first to light up. On Halloween, their porch turned into a living comic book. No one had ever heard them raise their voices. No one ever saw them complain. They were the kind of family people said, if anyone deserves peace in this world, it's them. But looking back, what once seemed ordinary began to feel quietly strange. About a month before the Holloways disappeared, Renee started taking more time off than usual. First, it was just a few days not feeling well. Then she stopped showing up to the library entirely, without notice. Her close friend and co-worker, Althea, said she once called to check in. Renee answered curtly, "I'm fine. Family's sorting some things out." When Althea asked more, the line went dead. Tasha, who used to post her art and journal entries online, suddenly deleted everything. She skipped a best friends gathering, something she'd never done before. Older neighbors remember one odd incident. Malik, usually calm and collected, lost his temper at a local zoning meeting. Someone proposed redevelopment of Maple Avenue for a new highway expansion. "This is my mother's house," he said. "We're not selling." His words echoed through the room and then vanished into a stack of ignored objections. Jalen, once the kid who told animated stories at recess, grew quieter. Teachers noted he'd begun sketching strange maps in a notebook scribbled with phrases like, "Do not step inside the circle," and "The night moves faster now." They thought it was just his imagination. Kira, still smiling, loved her cat necklace, a gift from her mom. But once, when Miss Kia asked, "Why do you like cats so much?" she whispered, "Because cats can walk through walls when no one's looking at the time. These were just quirks." But after June 14th, they started to feel like warnings, signs that everyone had missed. South Baton Rouge isn't a wealthy area, but it's a place where everyone knows your name, where the smell of Harold's fried chicken mixes with the quiet jazz drifting from Miss Lucille's window. The neighborhood isn't perfect. Squad cars pass by some nights. The water pipes break some days, but the people live like family. And in that family, the Holloways were the heart. They weren't loud or flashy. They were the foundation. If you needed help fixing a fence, Malik showed up. If your kid couldn't find a book, Renee found the perfect one. If you had trouble with watercolor blending, Tasha would draw beside you for hours. So when the entire family vanished, no one believed the voluntary departure the police recorded. The first feeling wasn't fear. It was something worse absence, like someone had silenced a song that used to play every day. Miss Kia, the first neighbor to walk into the empty house, never forgot that cold chill when she saw the ceiling fan still spinning and the untouched pizza on the table. Tasha liked veggie pizza. She said, Jalen always argued for extra sausage. That pizza, they wouldn't have left it behind. Not unless something was wrong. The police came. They documented the scene. No signs of struggle, no signs of forced entry, doors locked from the inside. The conclusion came quickly. Voluntary relocation due to personal stress. And, with that, the file sat still. No deeper investigation, no press conference, no one really searching. So the neighbors started asking themselves, started remembering, started looking at old photos, rethinking blurry moments in their memories. And what they realized was this: too many things didn't add up. Too many details that couldn't be written off as coincidence. Little Kira, who used to call Miss Kia her second grandma, now existed only in recollection. Every time Kaya looked at the tiny chair on the Holloway's porch where Kira once colored in princess dresses, she whispered, "If only I'd walked over 5 minutes sooner. If only I hadn't thought they were just napping." The Holloways left behind a void no one could fill. And in that void, the community began to hear things they once ignored: the sound of a warning, the hint of preparation, and the quiet sense that something far larger was on its way. June 14, 2011 began like any other summer day in Baton Rouge, humid, quiet, and moving just a little slower under the blazing sun. From the porch at 4030, Miss Kia looked across to the Holloway house as she watered her plants. Kira sat on the front steps, tiny legs swinging, a purple crayon in hand. She tilted her head, studying a sheet of paper. Tasha stood behind her, holding a glass of ice water, her hair wrapped in a floral scarf. Renee, in a loose maxi dress, lifted a hand and waved when her eyes met Kaya's, a moment so ordinary. No one thought it would be the last time they'd be seen that afternoon. A soft summer rain fell, the kind Baton Rouge gets without warning, around 5 p.m. Miss Kia walked over to the Holloway house carrying a bag of homemade rolls. She wanted Renee to try them before the church gathering next week. The gate wasn't locked. The scent of hot pizza lingered. She called out. Renee, no answer. In the kitchen. The ceiling fan turned slowly. Warm yellow light spilled across the counter, where 2 glasses of ice water sat, the ice half melted. A veggie pizza, Tasha's favorite, untouched. Beside it, an Italian takeout menu. The last page flipped by the breeze. A faint pencil scrawl read, "Don't open the back door. Don't say a word." On the floor by the sink lay Renee's phone screen, still lit. The back door was closed, but the latch was broken, like someone had tried to force it open from outside. Miss Kaya began to tremble. She backed away and dialed 911. 15 minutes later, a patrol car arrived. Officers entered the house and swept each room. No signs of struggle, no signs of violence, no sounds. Closets full. 3 pairs of shoes lined up neatly near the entry. Just absence, thick and suffocating. Outside, the rain grew heavier, pounding the metal roof like a clock ticking down. But no one came. No one opened the door. No one could explain how an entire family of 5 vanished in the middle of an ordinary summer afternoon, when Baton Rouge PD took over the case. Their initial report stated no sign of forced entry or disturbance, which meant only 2 possibilities. The Holloways either left voluntarily or they opened the door for someone they trusted. But the voluntary theory quickly fell apart. In the living room, Tasha's laptop was still on a digital sketchbook open to an unfinished comic. The latest page showed her hero Zuri, surrounded by shadowy figures. One page was torn. Next to it, a sticky note in red pen. An open door. A secret no one speaks. In Jalen's room. Everything was intact. His Lego set still mid-build on the floor, 3 pieces left in the box. Closet shut. His desk drawer held several hand-drawn maps. Police snapped photos, but dismissed them as child's play. Reviewing local surveillance, investigators found something more troubling. No footage showed the Holloways leaving. But a nearby gas station security camera 2 blocks over caught something else. An old white pickup truck parked along the curb, angled toward the Holloway house. It arrived at 11 p.m. on June 13th, left at 1 a.m. The license plate had been covered with black tape. The gas station owner hadn't noticed, figured it was a regular. Police noted the footage but took no further action. Insufficient evidence of a crime. They wrote. That attitude enraged Miss Kia and several neighbors. They demanded a deeper investigation. They begged officers to search the surrounding area. But the case was soon classified as voluntary departure, no signs of criminal activity, a decision that left the community speechless. Renee, a mother devoted to the library, who always checked off every children's book review for the year. Malik, a man who never went anywhere without telling Miss Kia first. And the kids Tasha, Jalen, Kira, how could they all leave no luggage? No keepsakes, not a word. When the police stopped looking, the community stepped up. Candlelight vigils bloomed on the Holloway's lawn. Flyers lined the streetlights, store windows, and church doors. But for a month, nothing. No calls, no sightings, not a trace. They hadn't just run. They had been erased bit by bit from the world. 2 weeks after the disappearance, Miss Kia remembered something. Back in May, Renee had handed her an old brown notebook while they were cleaning the garage. Just hang on to this, she'd said, brushing dust off the cover. If anything ever happens, give it to Malik. Kia had laughed it off. Now, her hands shook as she opened it. The first few pages were ordinary work notes, library schedules, book lists. But as the entries continued, they shifted into fragmented logs. June 3rd, man in suit parked outside again. Third time, watched the house for 10 minutes. Didn't come in. June 7th, heard noises at night on the back porch, like someone jiggling the lock. June 10th, Kira said someone walks inside the wall. Tasha said she saw no one, scrawled and rushed, but unmistakably worried. And then, on page 17, if no contact in 3 days, check Jalen's second desk drawer. She called Andre Malik's best friend since high school. Only he knew how to open the drawer using a small wooden slat, an old trick Malik once taught. Inside, there was no phone, no money, just an old USB, sealed in a plastic bag, and a hand-drawn map on folded paper marked in red and blue ink. At the center, the Holloway's neighborhood, Maple Street, Main Road, the strip mall, and one building circled in thick red ink, Pineview Residences, an unfinished high-rise that had sat abandoned since 2009 due to an investment dispute. Next to it, night surveillance, unusual movement, no rear cameras. At the bottom, a shaky handwritten note. No one can know about this map. They're closer than we thought. Andre was stunned. I remember Malik saying someone was pushing to buy out their house and he said no. Kia nodded, gripping the bag tight. No one ever looked at Pineview, she said. It's been a ghost building for years. They exchanged a glance. This wasn't just about a missing family anymore. This was something bigger, organized, planned, and very possibly something that had been happening in Baton Rouge for far longer than anyone knew. Andre, Malik's close friend, once worked as an electrician on several construction projects around Baton Rouge, including Pineview Residences, the unfinished high-rise near the Holloway home. When he studied the hand-drawn map, Renee left. His skin went cold. I know that name, Pineview, he whispered. He remembered something the community barely knew during foundation work in 2008. The construction was abruptly halted due to clouded zoning regulations. What stayed with him more were the eerie moments on site. We heard someone shouting at night, thought it was a homeless person. Andre said, and one evening, some of us spotted flashlight beams at the back of the building, and the site was already locked down. But the real oddity wasn't the building itself. It was how everything around it was buried in silence. Property records for Pineview were sealed, no developer's name clearly listed. The firm listed on the building permit, Bayard Urban Development, had only been founded in 2007, had never completed a project, and had no real office in Baton Rouge. The entire operation felt constructed to exist, but not to be seen. Andre contacted old connections in real estate, feigning interest in purchasing land around Pineview. The moment you mention that place, people either go quiet or point to a vague planning suspension. He told me, like someone told them never to bring it up. At that moment, Miss Kea received a call from the library, the one where Renee worked. A young co-worker, Carla, had been assigned to organize the archive. Inside Renee's old desk drawer, she found a sealed envelope with no addressee. It contained copies of a complaint letter drafted to the city council warning of suspicious activity around the Pine View project, posing a threat to community safety. The letter had never been sent. Beneath the typed text, in blue ink and shaky cursive, was a note. Malik disagreed with taking this public, said he would investigate himself. But if anything happens, start here. Kia clutched the note in shock, while Andre held it level-eyed, tracking the ink. They realized the Holloways hadn't simply disappeared. They had discovered something, and someone likely silenced them before they could say a word, deciding to act. Andre and Kia returned to Pineview in daylight. They brought along their neighbor, Gerald, who once worked security at the unfinished building, reserved and soft-spoken. His eyes changed when Andre mentioned the missing family. "I saw Renee around the fence line," he said, "about 2 weeks before they vanished. She stood at the edge, looking in, when I asked if she needed help. She shook her head and walked away." They returned to the lot, now surrounded by a rusted fence and a danger no trespassing sign. Pineview towered over them, silent and gray in the afternoon heat. There was no movement, but the air felt as though it watched them back. Andre used binoculars to scan the rear of the building. He noticed a camera mounted on a tilt pole by the side, but it was pointed down at an empty courtyard, not the perimeter. From there, they moved to the gas station where the white pickup had been photographed on the night of June 13th. Owner Mr. Faquan was reticent at first, but when shown the map, he sighed heavily. "I reported that truck," he said, "but when police came, they didn't ask any questions. They just noted the plate, then left." Mr. Rosquan produced a receipt from the security system I installed. High-resolution cams could see every license plate. But that night, the hard drive malfunctioned. It cut out from 11:47 p.m. to 1:15 a.m., exactly when the truck was here. He didn't accuse anyone, but his eyes told the story. "It's never malfunctioned like that, not once." Kea asked, "Did they ever check that again with the police?" He shook his head. No one followed up. Back at home, Andre opened an old email Malik had written, "If anything happens, look in Jalen's desk, and don't trust Parker, the one who's come twice." They dug into that name. It led to a William Parker, noted on land negotiations around the Holloway area between 2009 and 2011. But nothing concrete, no photo, no LinkedIn, no online footprint. The company Parker and Sons Urban existed only as a shell, no real office, just a rented postbox. The pieces began to align. Renee was seen near Pineview. William Parker was linked to questionable dealings. Malik noted the threat. The camera failures coincided. The unsent letter, and a family who vanished. No one in the community believed this was a voluntary departure anymore. Yet the most chilling question remained: if the police had known, why did they do nothing, or had they chosen silence too, amid all the clues pointing toward Pineview and Parker? Andre suddenly remembered another named Janelle, a woman who had lived down the street from the Holloways, but moved out just months before their disappearance. At the time, she was thought to be just another renter. But Andre recalled Janelle mentioning she worked as an office assistant for a real estate firm, and she'd spoken of Pineview as a strange project. After several attempts, Kia managed to contact Janelle through a cousin working at a pharmacy near LSU. When Andre called, Janelle was hesitant, but the moment he mentioned Renee and the map, her voice trembled. I never told anyone," she said, "because I was afraid. But yes, I knew they were being watched." They met at a small cafe in West Baton Rouge. Janelle wore plain clothes and an old watch, constantly scanning the room. "I worked as a temp receptionist for Parker and Sons," she began, "but their office. It was just one conference room and a printer. No staff, just Parker and a man in sunglasses who was always with him." She admitted to seeing a photo of the Holloway family pinned to their planning board one day. "I overheard them say, 'Household of 5, won't sign. Must be extracted by month end.'" When she asked jokingly, "Extracted?" how they smiled, but their eyes didn't joke. Janelle left after one late-night request. They wanted me to stay after hours to hand off documents. She was brought a folder labeled Maple 4028, Extraction Scenario B. When she asked what that meant, the man was silent. By morning, Parker said she was on temporary leave due to restructuring. Within a week, she'd moved away from Baton Rouge. Janelle's story pulled back the curtain further. Extraction scenario. The phrase alone made Andre's skin crawl. They must have planned to remove the Holloways, he said quietly. Janelle nodded. And if they did this to one family whose next Kea gripped Renee's notebook, pages of notes, maps, and unease, all ignored, labeled as imagination. But now every warning had become chilling reality, urgent, terrifying, and undeniable. That afternoon, after meeting with Janelle, Andre and Kea returned to the Holloway house, now sealed off. With a tilted for sale sign and dust thick on the steps, they opened the garage, using an old spare key Malik had once given Andre. Inside, it was dark. The ceiling light flickered, and everything looked almost exactly as it had the day the family vanished. But they hadn't come for memories. Andre believed Malik might be hidden something else. They found a plastic file box containing Malik's land documents. But what stopped Andre was a large folded map inside an envelope labeled Plan B Use, only if necessary. It resembled the earlier map, but was far more detailed hand-colored, with grid codes like 3A, 4C, 5B surrounding the Pine View site. One plot, 5B, near the river and an old electrical station, was marked in thick red ink. No construction signs of burial. A small note in Malik's handwriting was clipped to it. That night, I heard digging, headlights, movement. Not rats, not animals. I believe something is being buried in 5B. Andre froze. This wasn't just intuition. It was a record from someone pushed to the edge of real fear. Malik calm. Grounded had left this as his final warning. Kea suggested calling the police. Andre hesitated. We're dealing with people who might control the system itself. Instead, they turned to an independent civic group, one that used drones to survey abandoned construction zones suspected of corruption. Andre knew one of the members. Jordan, a civil engineer and environmental activist. Jordan agreed. The next day, a drone was launched over Plot 5B. The footage revealed disturbed ground, irregular coloring, uneven grass, sunken patches that looked freshly refilled. Nearby, a half-burned trash pit gave off a strange odor. Jordan zoomed in the ash. They spotted scorched metal and a broken child's necklace. Kea collapsed into a chair. Her hands trembled. That belonged to Kira. I gave it to her last Easter. She never took it off. With the map, the drone images, and this artifact, there was no doubt anymore. Something was buried here, and someone didn't want it found. Jordan sent the drone footage to an independent press group that investigates shady urban projects in the American South. The Holloway story started gaining traction beyond the neighborhood. But within 3 days, Jordan received an anonymous threat, a typed, cut and pasted message: stop before someone else goes missing. Andre had no choice now. He brought the evidence, photos, maps, notes, and the location of the necklace directly to the Baton Rouge Police Department. There, they met Lieutenant Calvin Ross, once in charge of South Baton Rouge, but now stationed in an administrative office. Andre remembered him. He was the only one who ever listened back then. Kea said Ross reviewed everything in silence. At last, he said, I'm no longer in command, but I can request the full records tied to Plot 5B and Pineview. If what you say checks out, this isn't just a missing persons case. 2 days later, Ross called Andre. Urgency in his voice. I found something. William Parker, the man who signed land deals near Holloway's home, used to work as a private advisor for the Bayard Investment Fund. But here's the strange part. That same name shows up in 1999, court documents from a land dispute in Georgia. Only there he's listed as Will Parker Sr. Same face, same signature, same financial records. Parker's identity had been faked or recycled to fuel shady real estate moves. Andre returned to Malik's old map. In the lower corner, faint handwriting read W.P. Seen, not trustworthy. Warning: one of them made contact. At the time, no one knew what it meant. But while Jordan was reviewing archived Pineview security footage sent by a former construction worker, he spotted a man unlocking the building and walking in alone. The timestamp, June 12th, 2 days before the Holloways vanished. The man, Lieutenant Calvin Ross. Andre stared in disbelief. No, that can't be. But video doesn't lie. Ross had entered Pineview and stayed for nearly 45 minutes. They confronted him. Ross didn't deny it. I was hired to consult on security, he said, eyes low. They told me it was a storage facility. I didn't know what they were doing until you brought the maps. Kea stared at him. So you've known for 10 years that you might be tied to their deaths and said nothing. Ross stayed quiet. I was wrong, but I want to make it right. He handed them one last thing, a blueprint of Pineview, with a hidden basement not listed in the city's official records. That basement connected directly to Plot 5B. 3 days later, Andre, Kea, and the civic group organized a semi-legal entry into Pineview. They brought the blueprint and a local attorney, someone experienced with land dispute lawsuits, to protect them if arrested under criminal hazard investigation grounds. At 2 a.m., they slipped through the back fence where no cameras worked. Flashlights lit up peeling walls, mold-streaked floors. Every step echoed like a heartbeat. They found the entrance to the basement covered by plywood and thin cement. After an hour of chiseling, they broke through. The air was colder, sealed like it hadn't moved in years. The Pineview basement wasn't a material storehouse. It had a corridor running straight toward Plot 5B, just as the map showed, inside. They found 2 industrial-grade plastic bins, sealed shut. One held charred fabric and personal items, a melted water bottle, burned Lego bricks, and a long strand of hair, tangled in pink cloth. The other was filled with mixed dirt and ash, same as the pit they'd seen from the drone. Kea nearly collapsed when she recognized the pink. That's Kira's blanket. She slept with it every night. Jordan used thermal imaging in the far corner. He spotted a sunken spot in the wall, evidence of something once buried or pressed against the foundation. They marked the area and sent everything to a private forensics lab 3 days later. Results came in. The hair belonged to Renee. The burned cloth matched the synthetic fabric in Jalen's favorite t-shirt. And in the ash, traces of industrial chlorine, a chemical often used to erase biological evidence on a large scale. The old theory that the Holloways left voluntarily collapsed. No one packed bags. No one walked out. They were taken here. How? No one knew. But what remained was clear children's belongings, burnt ash, and a darkness no one could explain. Tasha, Jalen, Kira. They had been here. They had existed. They had struggled. They had cried for their parents, and then vanished. Andre stood in the cold, concrete room, flashlight bouncing off the ceiling. They didn't just want the land, he whispered. They wanted silence, forever, and that was the one thing they could never allow. Just days after Andre's team publicly revealed the evidence they found beneath Pineview in a local press conference, they were hit with a chilling blow. The entire zoning file for Plot 5B, including land ownership data, company names, and development plans, was suddenly erased from the Baton Rouge city system. The public site displayed a simple message, 404 record, not found. When Andre's team visited the land management office in person, they were told the files had been requested for legal review, but by whom? No one had a clear answer. A senior clerk, Ms. Gazmarla, hesitated before whispering, it was requested by an interagency coordination unit, not from the city. When Andre asked for names, she shook her head. We're not allowed to log that. Orders came from above. That was when Andre realized something even more terrifying. This wasn't just about a rogue real estate firm. It might be tied to a network, one where political power, private interest, and law enforcement interlocked silently but tightly. Every clue they had gathered was now vanishing, just like the Holloways. At the same time, the independent investigators discovered something else. Pineview, which was supposedly frozen financially since 2010, was still quietly receiving funding from a group called the Southern Renewal Initiative. It sounded like a charity. But in reality, it was a private asset firm, and one of its board members, William Parker, under a different name, W. Pendleton. When Kea heard that name, she gave a bitter smile. I used to teach his kid at the library. I had no idea. Andre scoured the shareholder list. One of them was a former Baton Rouge city advisor, the same one who approved Pineview's development. At this point, every theory they'd had started to collapse. This wasn't just about profit, not just about forced evictions. It might have been a trial run, a long-term experiment, one where entire families were just expendable elements. And if that was true, who would be the next to vanish when Andres' team tried sharing their findings with the media? Something shocking happened. 3 major Baton Rouge newspapers, each of which had previously shown interest, suddenly pulled out without explanation. A senior editor sent Andre a private message. "I'd advise you to stop. There are people who don't want the truth told, and they know how to make things go quiet." Andre didn't respond, but his heart tightened. His faith in the press, the justice system, the police, all of it began to crack. Kea, meanwhile, received an anonymous envelope at her front door. Inside was an old photo, Kira, laughing in a folding chair, holding a purple crayon and a note scrawled on the back. "It wasn't your fault, but if you keep going, everyone will forget her forever." Kea broke down. That night, sleepless, she flipped through old photos, Renee's emails, Tasha's book requests, Jalen's little questions. Every memory felt like a knife. "I used to believe that speaking up would bring justice," she told a small gathering. "But now I see this system was never built to protect people like us." Hope, the one thing keeping them going, began to fade. Jordan, the engineer who had helped them, was suddenly fired for violating company policy. Andre received a surprise audit of his bank account. Their group's email server was hacked. Parts of their data vanished. Allies slowly withdrew, not from disbelief, but from fear. Then came a phone call. A man, gravelly voiced, refused to give his name. He said only one thing: "You're closer than anyone's ever been, but the closer people get, the fewer live to tell it." As the call ended, Andre stood still, not afraid, but burning with a cold, quiet fury. He remembered Renee's face in that old photo, her eyes, fierce with love, holding Kira tight in the library aisle. She never ran. They never chose silence. It was the system that erased them, and if that system thought it had buried the truth, it was wrong. Then, out of nowhere, a sliver of hope emerged, not from the police, not the press, but from a young architecture student named Miles. He had interned at the firm that designed Pineview. In the school archives, he'd found an original blueprint, not a city-approved copy, but a pre-legal schematic. One detail stood out: a second underground level, never included in public records, labeled simply C7, access restricted only 2 keys. Miles didn't know what C7 meant, but when he sent the blueprint to Andre, the entire team froze. C7 sat directly beneath the area where they'd found Ash and Kira's necklace. No one had ever guessed Pineview had 2 basements, and now the possibility emerged. Could someone have been kept alive down there? Jordan, after some hesitation, proposed hiring a specialized scanning team, one that used ground-penetrating radar, usually reserved for military or archaeological work. A company in Atlanta agreed, as long as they accepted the legal risk. After 72 hours, the results arrived, and everyone went silent. Beneath Pineview's main basement was a void, nearly 40 feet long, over 10 feet wide, about 13 feet deep, angled, asymmetrical, like a twisted tunnel or a hidden chamber. No official map admitted its existence. And if Milas' notes were right, and only 2 keys could unlock it, then who had them, and why was it hidden at that moment? A horrifying thought struck Andre. What if someone had been kept down there and lived? Kea could hardly breathe. She pictured Kira laughing on the folding chair, dancing in the backyard. If even one of them is still alive," she whispered, tears rising, "then we can't stop. Not now. Not ever." That line became their mission, no longer just about justice, no longer just about truth. Now they had to save whatever piece of that family might still be waiting in the dark. In September 2021, exactly 10 years after the Holloway family vanished, the Pineview complex was finally ordered shut down. Not because of any official action from authorities, but because of an overwhelming wave of public pressure. led by Andra's team and a network of independent investigators online. The hashtag #Justice for Holloway swept across the internet. People from every corner of the country shared old photos of Renee, Malik, Tasha, Jalen, and Kira, as if calling them home. If not in body, then in memory. But the case, still open. The forensic reports haven't fully confirmed all identities found in the remains. The second basement, the mysterious C7, remains sealed, untouched, lacking an official warrant for excavation. And Parker, or rather, Pendleton vanished from every known database in August. So did all records tied to the Southern Renewal Initiative. Local police issued a statement. The matter remains under active investigation, but no one believes it anymore. People no longer trust ink stamps. They don't trust the street cameras that never seem to record what matters. Or these systems built to protect yet somehow swallowed a whole family without a trace. Andre continues the fight, but his eyes have changed. He's no longer the friend running the edges of a search party. He's now a living witness to one brutal truth. Sometimes, silence doesn't come from fear. It comes from the exhaustion of screaming into a system that refuses to hear you. As for Kia, she never left her old house. Every week, she tends to the lawn around the Holloway home. She lays fresh flowers on the front porch, as if Renee might still walk out any day now. "I don't need justice on paper," she once said at a memorial. "I need them remembered, because as long as we remember, they haven't truly disappeared." And yet, the biggest question still hangs in the air. What really happened on the night of June 13th, 2011? Who stood behind the hidden basement, the buried maps, the scorched child's necklace? Who wrote the words, "Don't open the back door"? Don't say a word. And most haunting of all is someone still waiting to be found in that place where even light and truth have yet to reach.